This is a $50 monitor, $250 monitor, and this is a $1,000 monitor. Look at the size of this thing. That's what she said. I used to play FPS games on the $50 monitor for thousands of hours, and it was great. Now doing it at 480 Hz feels insane. The $50 monitor has a 1080p resolution and the 60 Hz refresh rate. The $1,000 monitor has a 4K resolution, 4 times more pixels than 1080p, and a 240 Hz refresh rate. But it can also switch to 1080p at 480 Hz. Hello? That's awesome. Productivity, 4K. Gaming, 1080p. Can you smell the magic? But now I can't go back. I mean, I can, but after trying 144 Hz on the $250 monitor and 480 Hz on the $1,000 monitor, 60 Hz feels like looking at PowerPoint slides. Then there's display scaling. At 100%, the 4K desktop looks like this. But since 4K is like having 4 1080p monitors, you can scale everything up to 200%. 1080p, 4K, same size, but everything looks super sharp. For more productivity space, I like to go with 150%. Windows still looks okay at 1080p, but if you're using macOS, everything looks horrible. The mouse cursor, look at how pixelated. Compare this and this. The text, weird and blurry. Essentially, all Apple screens already have the 200% scaling baked in, so to properly enjoy macOS, I'd recommend a 4K monitor. Speaking of enjoying things, I wouldn't be able to enjoy the glorious refresh rate of this monitor if my PC couldn't run games at 4K 240 FPS or 1080p 480 FPS. Luckily, I recently built this PC. No RGB, no fancy nothing, but it rips through the games I want to play. It cost me $1,677, but it would cost around this much if you were to buy all the parts from Amazon within the US. There's a problem though. I like to play Counter-Strike at 4:3 stretched resolution. I've done it since forever ago, and 16:9 aspect ratio looks like this to my brain. Yeah, the problem with the $1,000 monitor is that if I use 4K 240 Hz mode, then this resolution looks okay. But if I click the button at the bottom and switch to 1080p 480 Hz mode, then only 1080p looks nice. Every other resolution becomes weirdly blurry. It looks very bad. So I'm not sure how much I'll be using the 1080p mode for playing CS. Speaking of competitive games, I recently found out that OLED monitors have the best response times. It's the amount of time it takes for a pixel on your display to change from one color to another. A lower response time means that your display can change the image faster, which can reduce blurring, ghosting, or trailing effects. And the $1,000 monitor is OLED. Not gonna lie, I haven't noticed any of the artifacts on the $250 monitor I've been using for the last 3 years, which isn't OLED, and I don't want to learn more about what those artifacts are just in case I start noticing. Speaking of OLED, let's talk about it more. It looks amazing. The black colors are super black instead of dark gray, and the contrast between light and dark areas looks surreal. Well, it's HDR. After using the $1,000 monitor for a week, I turned on the $250 one and immediately noticed how everything looked washed out. It's the same thing like with the refresh rate. Once I try something better, the thing I was looking at for 3 years prior with no complaints suddenly starts looking bad. The monitor curse. Let's talk size. The $1,000 one is 32 inches, which translated into the metric system means large. I want to push it further on my desk. I wish it was 10 centimeters deeper, or 3.5 cheeseburgers per square toenail deeper. The $250 one is 27 inches, and I think that's the perfect size for pleasure and comfort. That's what she said. Speaking of size, this is the $50 monitor's power supply, $250 one, and the $1,000 one. It's a brick. The $50 one has this cable. Yeah, that one. The other ones use either HDMI or DisplayPort. I also found out that OLEDs don't get as bright. The $250 monitor can get much brighter, but it hasn't really been a problem. I have a window to my right, and I still use the $1,000 monitor at 90% brightness during the day. Oh, and it also has a fan inside. Very quiet, but at night, when your mom's asleep, I can sometimes hear the fan spinning. Only when she stops snoring, though. Okay, and here's one more thing.
Element of